All right, we'll go ahead and get going. Thank everybody for joining. Welcome to today's webinar, where our theme in this webinar is where we do a webinar with we at Cognition with Sierra Pacific, and we'll talk a little bit more about what each group does here in a little bit. But our theme of these webinars is how processes can be improved with data, and data can be improved with processes. So today we'll be talking about how to use SLAs within ConnectWise in a real useful way. My name is Aaron Kennedy, and I've been working in the MSP space for 20 years. I'm in Atlanta, and a few of those years with Cognition360, where I've been helping MSPs to get to their data to make better business decisions. So today with me, if you guys can go ahead and turn on your video, I've got Cassie Kerr of Sierra Pacific Group. Sierra Pacific Group provides MSPs with shorter paths to success through consulting. Cassie's helped build documentation and processes around SLAs. Cassie, thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me. SLAs is one of my favorite topics, actually, to talk to you about partners, just because they're really misunderstood, I find. In front of the setup is kind of confusing to some people, so I'm excited to share that with everyone today.
Cool. Also with me is our resident lover of all things MSP, Christy Perez of Cognition360. So at Cognition360, we provide analytics and reporting around ConnectWise so that all of their customers get turnkey reporting within just a few days of sign up. Christy brings MSPs from being a data nomad kind of thing to really using data within their MSPs to make decisions. Christy.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to talk about SLAs with you. Been in the MSP space longer than I like to say, and been using ConnectWise since about 2005. So excited to be talking about SLAs. Cassie definitely knows more on that subject than I do. I was always on the operations side of the MSP space. So excited to show you some reports with Cognition360, and feel free to hit me up afterwards if any of you have any additional questions.
Mm-hmm. So just to get going, so one of those things, we're talking about SLA management, and you know, one of those problems I had when I had an MSP was in my MSP days, you see the service board list and you see there's SLA stuff in ConnectWise, but it always seems like really complex, or it didn't really fit for what we're doing. And from my perspective, we didn't really have SLAs with any actual customers. So if we didn't meet a certain response time or something like that, I didn't have to refund a customer or anything like that. I just wanted to provide good service. And so we made all these time-based workflows and had a team of dispatchers and all kinds of things to ensure this quality of service delivery where we want it to be. And not that those are bad things, but the problem with that is that only is very tactical, and it doesn't really help you from a long-term perspective. So as time moved on, I realized even if I didn't have an SLA with using the built-in management, I could still have an internal SLA, right? Or some people call that like a service level objective, SLO, whatever you call it. It's the same thing, but it's just you don't publish that or have any agreements with your customers on that. So we actually kept, after we started using some of that, we kept our time-based workflows, everything I was just talking about a minute ago. But like from an ongoing perspective, I wanted to know, how are we meeting this as a team or an entire help desk or whatever? So using that SLA portion and measurement within ConnectWise to grade each of those tickets as they're going through is really the only way to get a comprehensive view of how are we doing this, so I can make managerial decisions and things like that. So we'll get going here a little bit, but if you have any questions throughout the webinar, of course, ask them in the chat, and we'll respond to that in the Q&A, and we'll hit that at the end too as well. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, here's exactly what you'll learn from today's webinar. What you learn today is the basics of SLA setup. Obviously, there's a lot to it. But Cassie will go over some of that in a little bit. You'll learn how to report off that data, because if you set it up and you don't ever report off of it or look at it, it doesn't really do you much good. And then vice versa. And then you'll get access to a trial of our services, both in the 30-day trial of Cognition, and you can get a setup call going with Sierra Pacific. And then as a bonus, you might want to stick around till the very end of the webinar, as Cognition360 is giving away a free onboarding session, and Sierra Pacific Group is giving away a free assessment. And that's up to a $2,000 value right there. So I really thank them for offering that. That's just huge. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So step one is just really understanding how the SLA framework behaves, so you can measure that setup properly. And Cassie, I've heard several MSPs where Sierra Pacific has helped them to get this configured properly. Can you speak a little bit to the mechanics of SLAs, how breaches work, what are the stages of an SLA, and more specifically, how ConnectWise calculates that?
Yeah, so SLAs and ConnectWise will track three things. So it's time to respond, time to plan, and time to resolution. When we talk about time to respond and time to plan, sometimes that's a little ambiguous. So what I like to say is your time to respond is your time to assign a ticket, and your time to plan is your time to in progress. So when does the technician start working on the ticket? Once you meet those time to respond and time to plan goals, they cannot be unmet on the ticket. So what that means is, like, once you get it to in progress, you can't go back into time to respond, and it's not like counting time into that bucket. It's basically just moving on to the next phase, and then you're tracking your time to resolution. You can put SLAs on hold. So if you have a ticket that's maybe waiting on a customer or waiting on a vendor, kind of outside of your control, you can use a waiting status, and then your timer will pause. And then one other note is your time to resolution. Once it's met, if your ticket has to go back into an open status, it can affect your time to resolution status. So if it's all right, I'll go ahead and share my screen and go through some of what the setup looks like inside of ConnectWise.
Yeah. I think something good to kind of cover in that is that ticket lifecycle is, how do I move something into a responded status in the SLA? Because it's not like you click that. There's not like an SLA box that you click, I have now responded, right? So I guess you're saying that's configured right here?
Yeah, so the way you kind of meet those like goals is by ticket status change. So every ticket status has an escalation status. That's this column over here. So it's either we have not responded, we have responded, we have created a plan, we are waiting, or we have resolved. So all of your ticket statuses should be configured to kind of meet with that SLA lifecycle. So as you can see, the only one in our list here that's we've created a plan is in progress. So that's the only status that's going to help us meet that goal. Another thing that we like to recommend to kind of, I know a lot of times it's hard to get technicians to even update their ticket status. So you kind of lose some of that data because it's all tied to these status changes. It's not a matter of when they started working on it, right? You have to change the ticket status. So what we do is we restrict the time entry. There's actually a setting inside of ticket statuses where you can not allow time entry. So that way, when they go to put their first time entry in, they're forced to put it in progress.
Okay. Yeah. So you're just forcing that good behavior, because we all know technicians don't like to do anything on the administrative side.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. So we implemented this internally in our system, and sometimes I'll go to put my time entry. I'm like, oh, I forgot to change status. So I can just flip it right there. So it is a really helpful reminder to have that. And then, as I was mentioning, the time to resolution, because it can start counting again, I like to have a reopen status. If you allow tickets to reopen, put that in a waiting escalation, so you're not affecting your time to resolution unless the ticket needs to be reworked, right? So if it goes back to in progress, then you're counting again, but not if somebody just replies thank you or has maybe an unrelated question.
Gotcha. Yeah. So how does that look within the ticket itself? Does it change? Is there any way I can see on an individual level, how did we do with this ticket as far as SLAs are concerned?
Yeah, I'm just gonna click into one of these tickets I have here. So this ticket's in new status, right? And so we'll see, and I haven't shown the SLA setup table yet, but it'll actually tell you when you need to respond to that ticket by. And this is all based off of the goals that you set in your SLA setup table. But I can see here that I have not responded to this ticket yet. And this is actually how many hours and minutes I have remaining to meet that goal. And it's red because I missed it. But once I move the ticket to assigned status,
Wait for those circles.
Yeah. We can see now that the next SLA status here is right. We need to plan by a certain time.
Oh, so it moves to the next stage, right? Yep.
Right. Yep. So we'll see the X here that we've met that respond. I mean, we didn't really meet our goal, but we met the response. And then once we go into in progress, then you should see we need to resolve the ticket by a certain date.
And the reason this ticket is picking up that SLA configuration is because that's done in the setup table. But you can also do this. There's kind of like a staggered hierarchy, right, of how you can apply those SLAs.
Right. So the SLA is either going to be applied by your default SLA. So this is in the SLA setup table. Whatever you have configured as the default for, I think by default in the system, it's no SLA. So if you haven't ever, configured SLAs, your default is going to be no SLA. Then the next way to override the SLA is by the agreement. So whatever agreement is attached to it, and I think this is how it's being applied in this ticket, is by the agreement. So there's an SLA field where you would say, okay, maybe I'm wrong there, but you could apply an SLA here at the agreement level.
Yeah.
You can then override the agreement SLA by attaching a configuration. So maybe if you've got like a really important server that gets attached to a ticket, can override and has a higher priority SLA, maybe a 24-hour SLA.
So the idea being that if I have a customer that I don't have an agreement with, I probably don't want to track that service metric. But if I have an agreement with them, then obviously I might want to be a little bit more aggressive than that. And then if I've got a specific, like, hey, we really got to make sure our EMR server or whatever is up 24/7 and has a 30-second response or something like that, you can apply that at the configuration level. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also use configurations for maybe a VIP client, maybe, or like a client that is maybe on your hot or warm list. Maybe they're an upset client and you want to make sure you're giving them a little bit more attention. So you can use a configuration, attach that to tickets to override the SLA.
Cool. So I know there's a lot more to it, how it works and that kind of stuff. If you guys want to hear more, you can reach out to Sierra Pacific on that. I'm going to throw a poll up here real quick and just let me know if you'd like to set up a call on that. You should have a poll. Yes, there's the questions right there. I'll just let that go ahead while we're filling that out. Yeah, I notice you've got the note at the top, project in progress. I've seen people use VIP stuff for that as well. The service alert thing at the top.
Yeah, exactly. I like this one. If you've got an open project, kind of a way to let the service team know. That's
a cool idea. That was not a ConnectWise feature when I was using ConnectWise. All right, I'll go ahead and end that poll. Thanks for your responses there. So thanks for showing us how to get those set up. So once we've got those set up properly, now what we can do is we watch those tickets kind of go through the system, right? So that's when the data starts being created to work through. So as you know, ConnectWise is a great intake tool. So it's really good at different ways people can get data in. So I can put a PO in, I can put a time entry in, et cetera. It's not always the best at being able to pull that data out in a way that's really meaningful. So this is where Cognition360 fits into that full stack. You've got ConnectWise, Cognition360, and Sierra Pacific as that full stack there. So once SLAs are configured, we can jump into the reporting provided by Cognition360. Christy, if you want to go ahead and share your screen and show some how Cognition can do reporting around SLAs. I think you might be muted, Christy. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, so with Cognition360, we have a few different SLA reports out there. We have a Ticket SLA Insight Report. That's what we're on right now. So we'll kind of walk through that one with you. With this report, this dashboard here, it's basically going to let you see, you can pick a certain date range if you want to look at it just for last week. And you can see the percentages that you're hitting those SLAs. It is pulled directly out of ConnectWise, how your SLAs are set up in ConnectWise. So you can see your response, your res plan, your resolve, which Cassie was talking about earlier, to see what percentage of those have been hit or not hit. You can also select, like if you just wanted, you can see here, I've just got support board selected. You could select any particular board that you wanted to look at. Or if you wanted to select just a particular customer out, great for, if you have a QBR coming up and it is a client, or you do have an agreement with that client to show how, what percentage of that particular SLA was hit. SLA here, you could pick the SLAs if you have the different SLAs set up as well. And then if you go to the summary, this is going to let you see kind of a trend line for your responded, your res plan, and your resolved. If you see a low area, so like in June, you can see it went down, you are able to right click, drill through into those tickets as well, to let you see those tickets and see, what was hit, what was not hit. You can, sort by response time to see what were those tickets that were responded to, what were not responded to. And then down here, you've got your boards, if you did have all boards selected, to see what your percentages is on all of those. So I have worked with some clients that even put some KPIs on their technicians from a SLA standpoint, or just want to check out, how are our technicians doing. So you're also able to look at the SLA insights by technician. You can also sort, you can click a particular technician and it's going to sort all that data for you over on the other side as well. And another good one is your ticket priority. So like, for instance, you might have an agreement that it's just priority 1 tickets have to meet this particular type of res plan or response time. So this is a way for you to be able to see that across the different months. And again, you can, I believe, drill into that information to see those ticket details. And once you're in those ticket details, all of the drill throughs with the ticket number, you can link back to your ConnectWise and go directly back into your ConnectWise Manage from the reports. Another report that we have is the breach report. So with the SLA breaches, this is going to let you see by board, by SLA, by particular time. So you can see here, I'm just looking at 3 weeks time. And there's a total of 352 tickets, and it's letting you see that there were 41 tickets out of those 352 that were breached. You can see here what percentage, from a priority level. You can click on the particular priority. It's going to then show you those tickets as well. And then again, drill through into those priority 1 tickets to see who they were for. All of got filters kind of opened over here for you to see. With Power BI, one of the awesome things about Power BI are the different filters that you can put in to the report. So if you just wanted to look at a particular customer or even a particular type, so let's say you've got types where, I only care about, outages, for instance, you could actually click on outage, and then it's not going to do it in here. I guess we don't have any, but if you had any that were just for
no
outage,
outages for that customer.
No outages, but it then would just show you that particular ticket type just for outage.
Yeah.
So this is looking at response. The same report is here for your res plan, to look at it just from a res plan standpoint, and then also from that resolved breaches. So out of resolved, you can see out of 352 tickets, only 7 of those tickets were breached from a resolved standpoint. So really good percentages there to look at. A couple of other reports that we have that will pull in SLA. Again, I was talking about, KPIs, for instance. A lot of times, if you want to see from a KPI standpoint on a particular customer, the KPI report will give you that average time to first time entry. A little different than an SLA. This is basically saying once a ticket has been created, how long before that ticket is being worked. So it's a way for you to not be able to trick the SLA. We all can kind of trick those SLAs by, changing statuses. This can't really be tricked. So it's a good one to look at.
So you could use it even
SLA.
if you don't have SLAs set up.
Yes, you can.
I mean, you could use that today, right?
Yeah. And it's a great KPI to look at for, ticket priority. Like if you have critical tickets, you could go into your ticket priority for critical. or priority 1, 2, 3, however those are set up. And then you
Mhm.
can see your average time to first time entry. You could even select in here, say, I just want to see, support board, for instance. And then it's just going to show you support tickets and then let you see what those tickets are. Again, you can drill into those tickets as well to see what those are from an average time to first time entry. Make sure there's not an anomaly or something in there that's pulling that up. And then here's your average time to response, plan, and resolve. So I also like this, again, from a technician standpoint. If you are putting KPIs on your technicians, especially on particular boards or even on particular clients, to be able to see from a KPI standpoint what each individual engineer is doing. And then you can also look at trends. So you can actually click into a particular technician and see their trends down here at the bottom for their response time, resolve time. Another really cool report that we have is where we're going to benchmark you against other MSPs. So we look at ticket quality, we look at these measures, and your SLA is in there as well. So looking at 6 months data, best in class is about 80%. And I have just the service delivery team business unit selected here and the support board. So they're close to that 80%, but you can see here that SLA target is, a little lower than what you would want it to be. So then you could go into your technician analysis and then look at it from a technician standpoint and see who is coming in lower, hitting those SLA targets, and then actually click into any of those. So if I want to look at just Britt, for instance, I could come over here and just sort by Britt's data, and then it's going to let me see all of his benchmarks to see, is it just SLA that he's having some issues on, or do we need to go and talk to him about configurations, type, subtype item, that kind of thing. So It's just a way for you to see all your KPIs in one place, especially if those SLAs are important. I think kind of what you touched on in the past or in the beginning, Aaron, most of the time SLAs that I've dealt with have always been that internal SLA. So we didn't have too many agreements where we were pushing out SLAs from an agreement standpoint to a client. But if you can get your SLA set up, like Cassie was talking about, even from an internal standpoint, it's a great way to make sure that you're providing that service that you need to for the client.
Cool. Thanks, Christy. So I'm going to throw up another poll. If you're interested in finding out more about Cognition360, like I said on this webinar, offering that free 1 month trial, I'll go ahead and throw that out there to see if anybody's interested in learning about that a little bit more. But while we kind of go through that, so it's great to get to that data so you can surface that kind of stuff up. And I think obviously the next step is, I saw a couple of technicians on there that might have a long first time entry or a bad SLA kind of review. From a technician standpoint, it's not really, at least an individual technician standpoint, it's not really a metric. You're not going to be like, okay, you're not getting bonus this week because you didn't make your SLA, because the SLA is the full life cycle of that ticket. So it might not be their fault, so to speak, if that SLA wasn't met. It could be something else, like a triage process, or a dispatcher took a while to get that ticket to them, or they got sent on site while they're in the middle of another ticket or something like that, right? So Cassie, what kind of things do you guys recommend, or have you seen where, okay, we've seen these problems in the SLA, now what do we do? Do we need to reconfigure this? Do we need to have training? What kind of things like that?
Yeah, so what I would recommend is looking, I think like Christy was showing, you can drill through, and I would look at the SLA breaches and go into the audit trail to figure out what exactly happened. Because, recently, even internally, we had a ticket, we had 1 week where our average time to plan was it jumped way up. We're what happened? So we went and looked at which ticket had the highest time to plan. And we found that a ticket just went to the wrong board and sat there for a week, and then it got moved to our board. So it looked like I hadn't responded for 5 days, but that was when I got the ticket. So it sat on the other board. So what we were able to do is say, okay, well, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Let's make a workflow rule on that board and say, hey, if something sits in the new status for too long, or hasn't been updated in so many days, we're going to start notifying people.
Okay, cool. So if you want to hear more about that, I'll throw up at the end some contact information. You guys can reach out for a little bit more information about what actions you can take, and then circling back to these reporting to make sure that's actually moving the needle, right? Making a difference. I'm going to open up for Q&A. We got a couple of questions in the chat. Cassie, these look very specific for ConnectWise. If a ticket changes service boards, does the SLA reset?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear. Like, a lot of people think that the SLA resets. It doesn't. So just changing a ticket board is not going to affect the SLA. What could affect the SLA by changing the board is if maybe the agreement comes off of the ticket because that agreement is under a different department or something, or maybe the statuses on that other board aren't really aligned with the right escalation status. So things could affect the SLA, but it doesn't reset. Once, like I said, once you meet the time to respond, time to plan, those cannot be unmet for that ticket.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, so if I don't have SLA set up, this is a great question. If I don't have SLA set up yet, how do I know which hours to pick for each stage of that SLA?
So I think a great place to start, and maybe one of those reports that Christy was showing, I don't think she mentioned it, but you can see the average time to respond and plan and resolve. So at least gives you somewhere to start. Now that's assuming that your escalation statuses are in line with where they should be. But that's,
oh, you mean like ticket type, subtype, and item?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you can see that
yeah,
what's the average time to, or even by priority, because if you're going to do your SLA by priority, maybe you see what is my average time to respond and plan for priority 1 tickets.
Okay. And then last question we got here, is there a way to set measurement to only measure response within business hours or business days? It's a great question.
Yeah, so in the SLA setup table, you define what calendar is used for that SLA. So you'll use your office calendar, so whatever your business hours are, like 8 to 5. If you have a 24-hour SLA, that's an option. You can even create custom calendars. So maybe your office hours are 8 to 5, but your support hours are from like 6 to 6. So you can choose which calendar is used, and any holidays associated with that calendar, any off hours are not counted towards your SLA.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I think that's all we got for today. I'm going to throw up some contact information here on the screen. There we go. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to these two individually. I'll leave their contact information up. But thank you for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.